Hello, everyone, and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about the astrology of May, and also I'm going to be focusing on the full moon in the sign of Scorpio, which takes place on the 12th of May, 2025. But before I begin, I would just like to thank from the bottom of my heart, Rachel, for your kindness and your generosity. You really left me speechless. Thank you so very much. So, going into the month of May, well, already as we begin May, something really important and powerful takes place, and that is Pluto starts its retrograde on the 4th of May until the 13th of October. And Pluto will retrograde back in the sign of Aquarius up to 1 degree and 22 minutes. So this time it's in Aquarius for good. It's not gonna exit. However, it's still a pretty powerful moment because it still covered new territory in the sign of Aquarius. So it's going, of course, not in physical reality. Whenever I say going backwards, it doesn't mean physical reality because the planet never moves backwards, in astronomy, so to speak. But understand my metaphor. So Pluto moving backwards, as they say, moonwalking back in the sign of Aquarius, well, it activates all the themes that it highlighted up until this 3 degrees of Aquarius, more specifically, almost 4 degrees, 3 degrees and 46 minutes of Aquarius, from where it starts its retrograde from. So, looking back at the themes of Aquarius, we can say a lot has happened in so very many different ways. Well, on first hand, the social movements, the social political changes that they impacted like a meteor, like they really shook everything to its core in exactly in an airy Aquarian expression. However, the ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, the modern ruler, is in the sign of Taurus. So Uranus provided the earthly expression of just that. So this is where it was like a literal earthquake, even intellectually, mentally. The technologies that appear, the AI, the social political movements, all the polemics basically in society, in every parts of it, the division, but at the same time the unity of smaller groups. I could speak about this for hours really because there is so much that has happened. Well, Pluto going retrograde highlights that once again, but whenever a planet goes retrograde, even a big planet like Pluto, its symbolism turns inwards. And that's really, really powerful at this time. Why? Well, Aquarius is the people, us, all of us, everyone, both interconnected regardless of what that means. For example, the internet. Like the internet is the most typical expression of manifested Aquarius energy. It literally connects everyone in a literal, true, non-exaggerated sense. Like, and everyone can have quite an easy access to it. Okay, of course there are exceptions, but in a bigger picture, many people all across the planet, regardless of nationality, of country, of location, of anything, can connect to the internet. So that's basically right there, right off the bat, the most common expression of Aquarius that everyone can understand. But of course, this has many different other different expressions like politics. its mundane expression is politics, the world of politics, everything that happens in it. Pluto is definitely the big power players in politics. So, and again, Pluto just freshly ingressed into Aquarius from Capricorn. The big people, the leaders, the top-down authority. So it still keeps its symbolism, even in Aquarius, because the big people and the top-down authority and the hierarchy basically is a very important key figure, so to speak. It plays a primary role in this revolution because without a shadow of a doubt, it is a revolution. Technologically, we can deny it. Sociologically, politically, even. And Aquarius in ancient astrology, well, was the good spirit. So, of course, inspiration, the humanitarianism of Aquarius, the human element, the human spirit, highest aspirations, highest expression of our intelligence. So, that is very important because Aquarius, in its very divine nature, elevates everything and wants to elevate everything. Pluto is, in a sense, the contrary. It needs to highlight everything that is not up to elevation and for us, all of us, to do something with it. So it exposes the power dynamics in an Aquarian way. But of course, it exposes or it causes all of us to focus like a laser beam on how we feel towards the balances of power. Because Pluto is power. Pluto is big money. Pluto is big important people. The most important in the world, so to speak. Um, Oil, fuel, where the riches, gold, where the riches lie. Where, and of course, from the 1930s onwards, actually the period when Pluto was discovered, Pluto himself, well, it rules radioactivity, nuclear tech, especially in Aquarius technology, and our intent with it. So you can imagine nukes, and we have to speak about this. We can't sugarcoat this part, even if it's something almost taboo. Nukes and what we do, we as in humankind, we do with it is definitely under Pluto's microscope because we need to elevate. That's non-optional. As I said, on one hand, because the very nature of Aquarius demands elevation, and on the other hand, the ruler, a modern ruler of Aquarius being in the sign of Taurus, Earth sign, we need to embody it, not just say it, not just think it, not just plan it, but do it. Action. Uranus himself is on is conjunct fixed star called Algol, the head of Medusa, the malevolent fixed star. It has like an astrological horror story to it. Whenever Algol is involved, it almost like it sends shivers up astrologers and everyone who knows astrology or mysticism's spines, because it is very notorious. But Uranus is the planet of big change, winds of change, literally, planet of wind. So the heads of Medusa, right, are revolutionized. Well, of course, the most primary example, Uranus is moving forward now, going back on its shadow path. So it is, I'm not, okay, at this full moon, it is covering new territory, but at the very beginning of May, I do not believe it's covering all that much new territory. So last time it was on Algol, well, a lot of things happened. For example, the assassination attempt of President Trump, and a lot of other similar events, because Uranus being on Algol isn't a day, it is a prolonged period of time. So a lot has happened. Uh, if I'm not mistaken, the president of Iran died in a helicopter crash. A lot has, like, really a lot has happened in so very many ways. Like, CEOs are also this, the heads of presidents, world leaders, anything real. Pope Francis, the head of the Vatican, but of course Pope Francis, um, well, he went to eternity, so to speak, at this present Uranus conjunct Algol. So this happened just now, and Uranus wasn't even very, very tightly conjunct Algol when this happened. So we can see the symbolism of heads falling, stepping down, kings laying down their crowns. But with Uranus, this also means the other polarity. Leaders step up, the new, the next, the revolutionary, or the, well, I'm so sorry to say this, but I can't say it in any other way. The triggers, because some leaders, so to speak, are very, very, very temporary. They're just like the spark that the TNT needs to ignite. So this is a very powerful revolutionary energy, including the full moon. And basically, even the future lunar activities are going to touch in their own unique, specific way on either sovereignty, freedom, fighting for something, or dreaming something into existence. And the dreaminess of it is also part of dismay big time. But for reasons I'm going to be speaking about just a bit, let's just cover Pluto retrograde first. So its symbolism turn inwards. Where is the power? How do we individually and collectively feel about it? If we need to express our feelings, our options, while voting is definitely part of this. For example, in my country, the presidential elections, the second ones, because the first ones were cancelled, start exactly under Pluto retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Well, that's an interesting omen, isn't it? It's almost like the outrage or whatever it's gonna stir up is guaranteed astrologically. Like, it's gonna impact individuals in, let's just call it a surprising manner. Let's not polarize it even. But of course, this lunation hits every country in its own special way. And also, Pluto retrograde is somewhere in every country's chart. So we are going to be feeling this everywhere. A need to empower, a need to stand up for principles, a need to embody change. Because Pluto is the planet of transformation. The full moon takes place in Pluto's sign of Scorpio, and the full moon Sabian symbol, I hope I don't forget to mention it later on, is one that speaks about transformation in its deepest and actually most elevated alchemical sense. So this full moon, because every full moon is a completion, a culmination, a highlight of the lunar cycle. So it dishes something out. And in Scorpio, one of those things is definitely a sense of truth. an understanding of something in not necessarily just a superficial mercurial level, like just making sense with the mind and just that's it, in a deepest, most even psycho-emotional sense kind of way, where we really process something based on a truth, a revelation, karma, something that happens, changes, shifts deep within us, something that we observe, we are told, because speaking about Mercury, it is very active. So Mercury is going to be dishing things out itself. But also, I'll speak about this just a little bit on. I'm sorry, I just had to take a sip of tea. Um, so this will stir us both individually and collectively, and also individually in ways that, of course, are not necessarily related to the collective part. Just us based on our own individual karma, not connected to all that is happening around us, even in those ways, because Scorpio always goes deep and its ruling planet. So, speaking about Pluto, the ruler of this, it is holding a T square with, on one hand, Mercury from the sign of Taurus, 3 degrees of Taurus, and then Black Moon Lilith, both the true and uh, how you call it, mid Black Moon Lilith together. So that highlights it. That makes the Lilith expression very, very precise, singular, focused, almost like if we highlight it with a marker, when they're distant from each other, because sometimes the true Lilith is not progressing linearly. It can appear in many different degrees due to the lunar activity. So this time around, it's really, really focused in one point, one specific part of the sky. And that means it's speaking volumes about, well, in the sign of Scorpio, secrets, deep understanding of something, processing something. This energy is without a doubt also about healing, transformation, doing something with our wounds, our desires, our needs, our urges, impulses. So, in its own way, it urges us to Mercury, well, start processing, start looking things in the eye, stop running away from either inner or outer factors that, well, demand action. They scream at us that they need our focus, they need our attention, they need our neurons, maybe, or, well, Mercury in the sign of Taurus and this Scorpio. This can be a financial energy, financial access. So, management of resources, money, planning ahead, especially in Aquarius is the sign of the future. So ahead, planning ahead would be a typical Mercury in the sign of Aquarius. Okay, now it's in Taurus, but Pluto, it connects with Pluto in Aquarius. So planning ahead or needing certain stability to be able to plan ahead even is part of the picture. But Pluto in Aquarius tells both this Mercury and the Lilith in Scorpio. So Mercury and Lilith opposing each other in the financial axis. Pluto tells them that you can only expect so much stability because the collective, because it's going retrograde, right? Not going to be stable all that much. So it gives a reality check, which, well, on one hand, every reality check is useful, But on the other hand, if it says expect instability, it's not all that. The truth is helpful, but the prospect itself does make the situation harder, financially speaking. But this leads to, well, planning, different planning outside of the box. Uranus in the sign of Taurus, covering new territory now. So really outside of the box, outside of the comfort zone, outside of the norm, sometimes even outside of the natural. Taurus, the sign of the natural in any sense, way, shape, and form. The bull. And Taurus, well, it has a lot to do with Jupiter as a sign in an esoteric way, not the classic astrology, because, well, the bull is Zeus. When he wanted to seduce, impress Europa, a princess, an earthly princess. So the expression of Taurus ultimately, just like Aquarius, the fixed energy, just like Scorpio itself, needs to be elevated. It evolves slowly, it grows or whatever, it moves, it flows, it something slowly, but that slow pace may not be stopped. It needs to be kept going because it elevates. And we need to make sure that the elevation actually takes place. That's why the arch enemies, but invisible inner, not outer, but inner enemies of people with fixed signs, with a lot of fixed signs energy in their charts. That's what I wanted to say. Regardless of which fixed sign, because this is something in common. Great comfort and love of comfort. Comfort for fixed sign energy can be like a drug. It does help. It is important, useful, powerful. But if how should I say, if it exceeds a measure, it's not good, because then it becomes the enemy. Ignorance, non-empathy, toughness, rigidness, the same thing. It is so defensive, nothing can penetrate it. These people are meant to be here, standing, right, in an earthly way. But that can cause, in extremes, in excesses, a certain rigidity that does not ennoble anymore, that is not virtuous. So this full moon, this month, in its essence, it's going to incorporate exactly these energies, these invisible enemies from within us, and it will demand Mercury action, but mentally, verbally, management, foresight, but realistically. Jupiter, and the reason why I'm mentioning Jupiter is at the time of the full moon, Jupiter converses in the quincunx. And this quincunx is pretty exact. So it says something. Let me just highlight it for you. So this is the moon in the sign of Scorpio. This is Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. But if we want to complicate things a little bit, we can also add Chiron, and we must not forget that Chiron is with planetoid Aries. In both of them in the sign of Aries, very revolutionary energy. But Chiron, the wound and wounded, and the givers of the wound are going to be very highlighted. So two quincunxes pointing at the moon, well, that means a yod, a finger of God. fate, usually finger of God is a fated event, which it may be unusual because that's how it, that's how we know that it's fated. That's why it's not the norm. Quincunx. It's something either that hits us hard, psycho-emotionally, especially Quincunx energy, like a news, like a being witness to something or something happening around us that really is something extraordinary in any way, shape, and form. It doesn't need to be good or bad. Usually it's uncomfortable, I'm not gonna lie, but sometimes it's humorous. Okay, a quincunx is, well, it says things, so it's pretty serious, especially because of Chiron, the wound. It's in Scorpio, transformation, ending, sharing, and of course, toxicity, filth, secrets, the bad, the crimes, the illegal, the darkest of the dark, the realms of Scorpio, revelation under the full moon, quincunx, divine revelation, so that the divine reveals something for, well, kind of everyone to see. Aries. Aries is basically the individual sees. The queen, due to some kind of wound. So, long story short, let me just translate this. War crimes, war criminal, you did this, they did that, news flowing about this, the norm, what we're already used to, but it will really spike. Of course, Uranus is going to oppose the moon shortly after the full moon. So let's just say that Uranus is part of this, even though it's not exactly conjunct with the sun at the time of the full moon. But Uranus and the moon together in an opposition, well, especially in this axis, Taurus, Scorpio, calamity, earthquake, and we are already seeing a lot of earthquake, volcano, some kind of natural disaster where there's toxicity, toxins involved. I'm so afraid to say it but you know, fires because Mars will square Mercury. Mars will also square will it? I do think it will. Uranus. Anyway, Mars will square Mercury, so fire, the element of fire, destruction, heat, drought, or drought, extreme drought in some parts, and destruction by water, like for example, tsunami in other parts. Neptune in the sign of Aries, well, I'll just say this symbolically. Poseidon, so the Greek counterpart of Neptune, well, it was the ruler of the sea, but usually it was notorious for earthquakes and other type of destruction, not just water. Okay, flooding and tsunami and stuff like that. Yes, of course, that's the obvious. But where water wasn't necessarily a danger, earthquakes, and it summoned the winds like Zephyrus and his brother and stuff like that. So, what I want to say here is that Neptune, when is not very cheerful, it has a very destructive and ugly side as well. For example, when the Fukushima reactor disaster happened, 2011 or something like that, Uranus and Neptune were at Anaretic Pisces and Aquarius, Neptune being in Aquarius. That says everything about nuclear and the sea and how the water met the nuclear and it was bad news. and how it raised alarm bells, community, it brought everyone together. It had a doomy, gloomy, the sea is harsh expression, but it also had a humanitarian, beautiful ultimately, and sacred, unconditional love expression. So when Neptune is in bad mood, it can really, yeah, do a lot of damage, so to speak. Much like Uranus, just like from Uranus, you expect Uranus is the planet of the unexpected. But you would expect something unexpected, right? In this game of words here. But from Neptune comes from the deeps. Neptune comes from the shadows, from the invisible. You don't see Neptune coming because it may not come in a flash like Uranus in an instant. It may build itself up in the invisible, in the unknown, ignored, much like, I don't know. I'm so sorry to use something as disgusting as this, but like a fungal infection or something nasty. It can grow over the years. And it's there in the invisible. Nothing is there to challenge it, stop it. So Neptune has surprises as well. And for example, under how you say sub oceanic volcanoes and tectonic movements and things related to fire, well, Aries, but also water, Neptune, are gonna be stirring up. And this full moon may reveal something in this sense. But let's move on from the doomy and gloomy. Another thing I want to say is Saturn. Saturn at this full moon is almost anoretic. It's at 28 degrees and 58 minutes of Pisces. So anoretic is 29 degrees. So its shadow expression, its harshest expression. Saturn in Pisces, extreme temperature, extreme cold, extreme warm, extreme dry, extreme humors, so to speak, and extreme karmic display. Saturn is also buildings. Pisces, the sea water, the water taking down buildings, or build ancient buildings, ancient something discovered at the bottom of the ocean. But there's a destructive and a shadowy element to this, so we must be prepared for the shock or the horror of something. I'm so sad to say it, but this will not be evaded or eluded in any way because this is collective. This hits the collective unconscious, or better said, something, because 29 degree is the degree of elimination, is ejected, spat out, vomited out, sorry about, but this is the elimination degree from the collective unconscious. Secrets, things, it's gonna be biblical. This May is gonna feel biblical in many ways. And I say biblical as in ancient prophecies, or we are living powerful times. Things are happening that are outside of our even highest collective understanding. I mean, these types of, well, ultimately lived events. So this May is powerful. This full moon is powerful. But let's wrap up the full moon and speak about other elements here. So I want to say the Sabian symbol of this full moon, because ultimately it's Scorpio, transformational energy, the alchemist, phoenix rising from its ashes. For example, the lowest expression of Scorpio can be seen as the snake, as the tarantula, as the scorpion itself. the highest expression as the eagle, as the phoenix, rising above, or the natural predator of the snake. Well, it is the raptor. So, and the Sabian symbol is a rabbit or a hare transforming into a fairy or nature spirit. This is so beautiful because it speaks volumes about one of the alchemical paths, how to transform. The rabbit can represent the primal, it can represent the urges, the needs, survival, especially sexual energy. But this just popped into my mind. Well, full moon, Diana, the moon goddess, right? Artemis. Her sacred animal was the hare. So the rabbit on the moon, the sacredness of the hare. The hare is a symbol not just of lost sexual energies, and even when it comes to lost and sexual energies, it is the more innocent and naive expression. We are slaves to it, but not necessarily in a brutal and a nasty kind of way. So even when the hair is the symbol of a sexual expression, sexual energy and desire, or anything that goes with it, it's not the lowest or the nastiest kind. So it, as I said, the rabbit has a sacredness to it. And Artemis, the virgin huntress, goddess of the hunt, of forests. Fine, and Scorpio is, of course, getting what we want. So this can mean that the arrow of the huntress may reach its mark. And other planets point to this fact as well. Well, one of these planets I must mention here is that the moon trines an asteroid Amor, so Cupid, the winged little babies, which shoots desire and attraction and all of that love at first sight kind of energy into the hearts of mortals. Well, that's so Aries energy. Neptune, the illusion of love, lust. Uh, well, ultimately, Aries is also a primal energy. It also has a very animalistic and sexual side to it. So you can imagine that Amor in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is the home of the moon. So this is it empowers the moon, which is not comfortable herself in the sign of Scorpio. It is in what they call her exile, but what I want to say here, Cupid energy. So love and lust melting together. The energy is magical, powerful, fated, liberating. It weaves things together. So this can be a very strong energy of, and ultimately transformation. This, the sexual part, transforms into, well, fairy, nature spirit. That's the spirit. That's higher calling. That's magic. That's happiness. That's joy. That's the good part of, sensuality and sexuality. Because it does something divine. It does something sacred. It is the spirit expression of nature. So not the earthly, not the mundane, not the low. So this is where love at first sight type of energy can be fated at this. Actually, let's say all the month of May. This can be big in that sense. And the other funny coincidence, speaking about love, well, we know that Taurus, the sun in the sign of Taurus, illuminating the full moon, because full moon is always opposition sun moon, is in Venus's sign of Taurus, So Venus there. But there is an asteroid conjunct the sun named Aphrodite. So a different expression of Venus. Venus is there. So love, romance, romantic, fated love. Taurus embodied the senses, pleasure senses. Scorpio, the primal, the deep, the anything basically. So this can, and Uranus in the neighborhood, surprise, surprise, shock. So this full moon, okay, we understand the seriousness of it, especially collectively, because bit things are gonna happen, especially financially, financial access speaking, money, secrets, power, politics, revolution, rebellion, Mars and Leo, battle, Mars conjunct Varuna, battle for justice, and the most important aspect I even forgot. Moon trine, North Node in Pisces, fated, justice, but divine justice, morality, humanity, unconditional love. Every life matters, every soul matters, everyone matters. This is when Saturn and erratic Pisces, the earthly law, earthly justice, earthly, well, ultimately Saturn, the expression of law or the coercive force of the law enforcement cannot go against divine justice, because then the divine will break it down, will, how should I say it, override it through the sense of justice in the hearts of people. So this part of the energy is also going to be there. But anyway, going back, Moon trine the North Node, fated. And this also has a healing part, a healing quality. Chiron on one hand, quincunx Chiron, humanitarian help, help in any way, shape, and form, compassion, solidarity. So there is a powerful healing quality, even purely individually, personally, because this is forgiveness, or this is finding the way to, well, transform a feeling, a state, a memory, a trauma, something that was deeply impactful into some fairy. Give a meaning to it. See the sacred in it. See the divine in it. It becomes, again, I'm using the symbolism over and over again, but it's so beautiful that I can't stop myself. In Chinese culture, as we all know, sorry, Japanese or both, Japanese, I think, when something like a porcelain breaks, they don't just glue it back together, but they paint the crack with gold, or they actually put real gold in there. So its value in any way, shape, and form, even aesthetically, spiritually, the gold, like realistically in a Tauran way, grows. It is transformed into something with history and meaning forever. This is exactly the full moon and the energy of May and the energy of Pluto retrograde. Things transform forever because Pluto highlights all that is not susceptible to high expression or not susceptible to actually spiritual elevation. So, and what Pluto is going to reveal and expose will be, understand this symbolically, judged in tarot. The judgment card is Pluto. So, judged by the people, Aquarius. So, very strong revolutionary energy. But something revealed at this time. So, again, 12th of May, full moon in Scorpio. Something revealed at this time is going to really spark spirits big time. And besides all of this energy, I mentioned earlier, Pluto receives the T-square. So the T-square points to Pluto from Mercury and Taurus. and Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. There is a yacht formation pointing to the full moon, which means it's fated. Aries is conjunct Chiron, so healing or the wound, or for example, to prevent genocide, in grave injustice, murder, famine. Speaking about famine, Ceres, um, goddess of grain, goddess as in an astrological symbol related to nurture, related to food, related to um, how should I say, receiving source of life, as in life, is conjunct Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So it's grave, it's serious, it needs to be looked at, it needs action, it is judged as something. So it's the symbolism is spot on. So this will trigger urgent need for humanitarian help, humanitarianism, action, etc., etc., etc. You understand what I'm saying? And Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, Queen Kong Sing, urgent need to put the law or legal system or constitution right, or modify it. One of the two, because transformational energy. Transformation also means restoring something. For example, Scorpio is so symbolic of when a rusted, worn down object is restored to its former glory, especially if it's retro. So that's how we can understand the symbolism. Another element here is that Venus trines Mars. Venus from the sign of Aries, almost out of shadow. Venus is conjunct Salasha, Neptune's wife, in the sign of Aries. And that means that Salasha also trines Mars. This is a really, really beautiful energy of the heart, the magic of love, or when love and lust fuse together, and it gives courage, it gives psychological or even spiritual divine power. It empowers the instinct, the ram, Aries, it empowers the head, the GPS, in the name of love or with the power of love or carried on the wings of love. It reaches its destination, survival, nobility, courage, fight. So well, Venus value money, survival even. So this energy has so very many different expressions of it. And Varuna, of course, is divine justice, cosmic justice. All of this is if the earthly law is very in a bad way parallel, with the divine law, well then, as I said earlier, the divine law has to override it. The moon is also conjunct Juno, asteroid, sorry, Jupiter's wife, of partnerships, commitment, promises, oath. In the sign of Scorpio, if someone broke the oath, there is going to be consequences. Jupiter. Juno calls the husband, make justice. And Jupiter, well, it was the ultimate judge ultimately, in Olympus at least, because he was the king. He became the king of the gods. And Jupiter himself is trined by Pallas Athena in the sign of Aquarius at 23 degrees. People, Aquarius, Pallas Athena, tactics, wisdom, even raw force, numbers, logistics, enforce the law, Jupiter in Gemini. The common law, the law of people, common sense type of law, not necessarily the Aquarius justice, divine justice. And the other thing that I want to mention is that on the 25th of May, Saturn ingresses into the sign of Aries. So it joins Neptune. This is a serious energy because on one hand, as I said, this is the elimination from Pisces and entrance into Aries. But this is very important because it's not just our typical exit from one sign and ingress into the other sign. This is the Alpha Aries and the Omega Pisces, the end Pisces and the very beginning. 0 degrees of Aries is also the world stage. It is the beginning degree of the zodiac, the most important degree, I would say, of anything that needs to exist in the earthly plane and not just. So, and Saturn is the principle of the foundation of everything, the base, the root, the stability of everything, the solid. And ultimately, the way we can understand Saturn is he is the principle that discerns what may enter reality and what may not, as in to stay only in the realm of Pisces, pure fantasy or Aquarius thought or whatever, not to enter reality. So you can imagine this in itself means powerful change. Very, very, very powerful and potent change. It meets immediately Neptune. So, and Saturn does not like it very much in the sign of Aries. Sometimes it acts as no boundaries. Well, Aries, impulsive, the head, no judgment, right? Nothing to fear, no authority. Aries and Saturn together. Other times, it's beyond discipline. It's almost to the point of cruel discipline. And Aries is the self-discipline. So any expression of this, where either it's very permissive, way too permissive. For example, let me give you the best example here. Sovereignty and sovereignists. Well, it can have such an ugly expression if taken into extremes. Like urinating everywhere you please, everywhere and anywhere you please. It is an act of sovereignty. However, do I need to say the rest? Yeah. But the other expression of Saturn in Aries is when it's too restrictive, when it's, well, you can play a game at hard. You can also play at ultra hard, or how you call the ultimate level, ultra hyper hard, impossible, or most people neither choose ultra easy because there's no fun in it. It's just easy. Everything is guaranteed. Neither choose ultra impossible. Most people choose in between difficulty. That's their norm. That's what works for them. So what I'm saying here is Aries is the self. It's up to us to set the difficulty. Saturn in Aries, because it's up to us, when it starts reaching the extremes, either ultra easy or impossible, well, it's a wake-up call that, well, ultimately we are at the buttons. We can do something about it. And this full moon is it's almost like a teacher in the sense that one thing that we can do is set how we feel about things. We determine our reality. Ultimately, we can be, when must and needed, the sovereign ruler of our emotions and reactions and self-discipline. When the situation is tough and you know that the exit from it is not tomorrow, you need to endure a bit of time in a, let's say, hard situation, tough situation. For example, let's say at work, a work which you don't like or find challenging, or something's not right there. There's no exit. You will not, how you say, resign, but you can have inner settings. The inner settings can be sometimes the saving grace. For example, take it as a game. You will feel differently. Everything, fate will weave itself differently. Or have a distraction. The distraction itself will change your mood. Or meditate, or anything that you can do internally to change the state. It will change. As I said, changing the state means fate has different material to weave with. You change everything. This full moon, this whole month, and the beginning of this summer period with Saturn moving into Aries, it will be a massive shift. And because it's self-oriented, and Pluto in Aquarius in its own way says the self was never more important, because strong selves, as in individuals, means strong collective or strong group or strong energy. That's why it's very important. But then the Aries expression highlights this even more. Pluto sextiles Saturn, Neptune, anything at the beginning degrees of Aries. There's power there. There is, as I said, individual. Everything is in the hands of the individual in any way, shape, and form, legally, internally, inner mechanism wise, psychologically, metaphysically, legally, politically, materially, culturally, artistically, in any way, shape, and form, because Aries is the beginning. Aries is infancy. When we want to birth something new, even literally, when we want to create something new, enforce something new, make sure that a change or an implement of anything reaches a Taurian state of stability and fixity, when that's the first anchor, first root in the earthly Taurus. It needs to survive Aries, and Aries needs to condition it for survival. So again, infancy. It all depends on us where we place the difficulty setting. And the difficulty setting is not the present situation, just Aries, the present, the now, this very second now. But Aries is all this now, includes the whole cosmos, our relationship with the cosmos. 0 degrees of Aries can be seen as the silver thread, the umbilical cord of existence, the way the divine breathes existence on a soul level, not just sheer life, but the soul's existence, the soul's life is the gateway between dimensions, basically. So it's very, very important. It's a big deal. So this will cause and we will feel a very strong shift in energy, and this will reflect in any way, shape, and form. As I said, 0 degrees is the world stage, and it's not something one time off. Both Neptune and Saturn will retrograde back into Pisces this year. So you know where I'm going with this. It's over the course of this year and into next year, the big shifts and changes and the importance of the individual and the self that we will experience and feel. So this month of May is trying to point to us that power, Pluto, and the judgment of what reality needs to be, is, always was. And that's the intrinsic design of the universe, of anything in existence, from the spiral of a galaxy to the galactic cluster, to the molecules, atoms, cells, anything above, as above, so below, well, is meant to be in the individual's sovereignty. Everything functions like that. Every living, breathing organism, well, we are alive because the cells in our bodies harmonize with each other. They both take care of themselves with their inner functions, but also provide what they need to provide to the integrity of us, to the organism. They do serve the soul, literally. So the same goes with the Aquarius energy. The individual needs to be healthy, empowered, and regardless of how we look at it, it still determines. It is still the ultimate judge of the course of events. Collectively, yes, but as I said, the collective needs a lot of individuals. Democracy, politics, that's the literal expression of that. Or the internet, in the sense that the internet needs a lot of information on it. Otherwise, it's just a phone line, right? The internet is powerful due to everything we upload onto it, or everything we give access to it in our personal lives. Internet breach security, power shortages, like the one we saw in Spain earlier last week or around Easter, something like that. Those can return, both due to Uranus, and Uranus will start aiming for that 29 degrees of Taurus himself, and afterwards ingressing into Gemini. But that later on in July. But it's powerful, it's shaking, moving, dynamic, and technology, electricity, everything above, aviation, all the aviatic disasters that happen basically everywhere around the planet in the past couple of months as Uranus started going direct, and when Pluto entered Aquarius after. So yeah, and also the industry of aviation, the tariff wars. So there is a lot of symbolism playing out, a myriad of symbolism, so much so that everyone can be a functioning astrologer just looking at what's going on right now and correlating it to the signs. So I think I'm gonna stop here. Thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you so much, Rachel, for the help. And until next time, bye for now.